I also refused to name the other people, quite simply because they weren't doing anything wrong. They weren't doing anything wrong. I was taken to the Kentish Town Police Station. It was there I saw my camera, the tape recorder, and everything lined up on the desk. And the police had heard all these stories about vampires, and going back to the ghost I mentioned. A few months before, and the papers had picked up the story and said it was a vampire, encouraged by certain other people who were actually, well, let's just say, were more than encouraged. So when I got to the police station, they spent all night, well, at least 2 or 3 hours, interrogating me. They said, do you believe all this vampire nonsense? And basically, they were just taking the mickey. They were making jokes like, oh, where's Christopher Lee then? Did he go home or something? Or things like that. I refused to give the police my address because in my flat I had all the records of the society, which wasn't quite so big at that time. But the point is, if I'd given them my address, they'd have gone into my flat to search it, and they'd have found all the society files. And on the files were all the people's names and addresses, and their membership numbers. People that wanted their identities kept secret, at least unless you were paying them permission. So I wouldn't give them my address, I wouldn't name the other people. And one of the police officers in charge of the case realised I was being extremely uncooperative because I wouldn't. Oh, I gave them a false name. I didn't even give my own name, I gave them another name to protect the society from bad publicity. He came up to me and he said, look, David, if you plead guilty, you haven't. Oh, he said, we're going to have to keep you in custody overnight because you haven't given us an address, which is why later in the papers it was printed.
What were they accusing you of? What were they saying that you'd be guilty of?
They hadn't actually accused me of anything at this stage. They told me, not at this stage, they just said, they said, if you plead guilty to the charge tomorrow, you'll be just warned as trespass. Trespass, and you'll just leave and the whole case will go on here. And I thought, fine, that suits me. It suits my responsibility to the people who are in my society. And so I took him at his word. I said, yes, when it goes to court, I'll just plead guilty. I'll be out the court, no one will know who I am, and that'll be the end of it. Now bear in mind what I just told you before. There's been unlimited damage at Highgate Cemetery up in the last few years before 1970. Serious damage when people were opening coffins and actually taking out the corpses. And there were stories on the television about it being a vampire. People were actually going in with their vandals or cranks or you name it. They were putting wooden stakes through the corpses, old Victorian corpses. And of course the police weren't very pleased about it, nor were the cemetery officials.
Were there also people breaking in for sort of non-occult basis with just like lead beads and things like that as well?
There was also a group there who were going into Highgate Cemetery and just, or taking the lid off, obviously the lid because lead's underneath, just stripping the coffins of lead. But those people had nothing to do with the occult. But they were operating in Highgate Cemetery.
Basically there are a lot of different groups that
yes.
were in and out of the cemetery, so
look,
it just becomes pertinent as we go on to talk about the 1974.
I really do hate names, but on this point, the punk singer, Johnny Rotten, I think his real name is John Lydon, I think, in his autobiography, no blacks, no Irish, no something like that.
No dogs.
No dogs. Thanks, Rex. It was you again.
Yeah.
He actually put a page in his autobiography, and he said, excuse me, oh Gareth, what year was that one?
About 1993.
Right, it was written in 1993. he just said, I haven't got the book with me, I haven't even got the quote, but he actually put, it was like a club down there in those days, and he described how they used to go in the pub, and then he used to go with a group of people into Highgate Cemetery and move through the coffins and take all the lids up and look at them. And he put that in his book. So it was under that sort of background that I was charged with all this serious heavy-duty evangelism.
And in 1970 then, the next day when you were to return to what we were talking about, that you sort of said, okay, well I'll agree to that, to the, right, what happened the next day then?
I agreed to that, this so-called deal. The next day when I went to court, I pleaded guilty. The police stood up in court and read a statement attributed to me. A statement I did not make, and I did not sign. And it was along the lines of, look, you wouldn't understand, I was looking for the king vampire. When I found him, I was going to open the coffin and drive my wooden stake through its heart and then run away. Now that was where I was in open court, and because I pleaded guilty of the Prussian court, because I pleaded guilty, it was covered by absolute privilege or qualified privilege, which means quite simply that the press can report anything said in court without any fear of libel. That's what they did. Of course, it made front page headlines. And I became a vampire hunter. As soon as I saw what had happened, I changed my plea to not guilty. And I decided to fight the case. And putting it quickly, I went to court in that September, the end of September 1970. And I did fight the case. And the case was adjourned 3 times. The actual charge was being in an enclosed area for an unlawful purpose. That was the unlawful purpose, interfering with bodies and trying to stake a vampire. And interestingly enough, the only evidence that the police produced before this guy, Pendle magistrate, whose name was DJ Purcell, was a small cross I had with me, only a small cross, and the wooden stake, but minus its string. Here, and they said that I told them I intended to stake a vampire. So I fought the case, I went back to court in September. It was adjourned once more. In fact, one of the magistrates that the case came before was somebody called Christopher Lee. I'm being serious, I don't know if it was fate. It was. Anyway, in the end, I fought the case. On the grounds, I said I was not vampire hunting, it was a serious psychic investigation. And I said, even if I was so-called vampire hunting, I said it's just as akin for groups of people to spend vast sums of money on psychic investigations, such as trying to locate the Loch Ness Monster, for example. And I pleaded not guilty and I was acquitted. After my acquittal, only a few little paragraphs appeared in the press. And even today, people still think I was guilty of entering Highgate Cemetery to stake. Highgate